Most of the time you spend developing games in Unity, you will be working in the scene view. This is where you will add objects to your scene, modify existing game objects in the scene, and add or modify the components attached to these game objects. By default, when you open Unity, it's going to take you to your scene view. You could see this here on this tab. If we click on Game View here, you'll notice that this tab has changed from Scene to Game. We could also do such with the Asset Store. I'm going to go back and click on Scene View. Now, I've taken a few cubes, 3D objects here, and placed them around my scene. I'm going to select one of these cubes and hit Control-D to duplicate this object. As you can see, it's very easy to duplicate objects within my scene view and place them around my scene at will. I could also come up here to Game Object and create other types of objects, which I can place around my scene. Now, I know that these particular models may not look very interesting. They're just primitive 3D shapes. But what you can do, as I will show you in a later tutorial, you can make a 3D model in any 3D modeling package that can save to an FBX file. Once you save your 3D model as an FBX, you could import it into Unity. If you don't know how to import objects into Unity, you can watch the tutorial that I've made in this series that shows that. But basically, you would just come up here to Assets, Import New Asset, and double click on your asset once you've navigated to it. It's very simple. You can also navigate the game level in Scene View and adjust the placement of objects. We've placed all these objects, but if I click on them and then I want to move one, I could easily do so with the Move tool. Please don't forget that the Move tool can be used as a hotkey when you hit the W on the keyboard. If you hit your E on the keyboard, you will change it to rotate, and if you hit R on the keyboard, you can change it to scale. Knowing these keyboard shortcuts will allow you to quickly adjust the objects in your scene to whatever look and feel you want them to have. Additionally, we can navigate our scene view by holding down the Alt key, left mouse button clicking and dragging. This allows us to orbit. If we hold down the Alt key and hold down the middle mouse button and drag, this allows us to pan around our game view. As you can see, using the scene view makes building game levels in Unity quite simple. When you select a game object in the hierarchy, the components attached to it are displayed in the inspector on the right-hand side of the screen. So as you can see here, we have the hierarchy. This hierarchy contains all of the game objects available to us that we've placed in this scene. So you'll see that we've created a number of cubes here and also a sphere and placed them into this scene. Note that if I go to File, New Scene, and I proceed to save this scene, none of those objects appear on the left-hand side except for what comes in the default for every scene, the main camera and the directional light. If I double-click on Scene 1, which was the last scene I was in, all of these objects reappear in the hierarchy. Taking you back to the second point that I mentioned, if I click on one of these objects in the hierarchy, you can see all of the different components that make it up in the inspector here. Down here, we have the project and console windows, or tabs. Now, I'll be taking you through these in a later tutorial, but basically your project tab has all of the assets within your entire game or project folder, and the console is useful for debugging code. As you can see, we have a warning here that was thrown by Unity's game engine. Note that a warning doesn't stop us from being able to play the game. However, most errors would stop you from being able to play the game. Also notice that when we press play, we've changed from scene view to game view. Now this is a very important change because if we unplay this and we go back to our game view, you'll notice that we can't place objects here as we could in our scene view. So that's a very important distinction to make. If you notice that you're stuck on one viewport and you can't rotate around when you hold down Alt and you left mouse button click and drag, simply come up here and just make sure that you switch from game view to scene view.